If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I upload almost daily on this channel, so if you're looking for some consistent sports talk during the quarantine, this is the place for it. Also drop a like on the video, it only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. I really appreciate it. Today, continuing the dumb criticism series, I am talking about a player that I myself have been very critical of in the past, and that is James Harden. However, I think with Harden, there are a lot of fans who take it too far and call the guy overrated. I've seen people be as bold as to say that he isn't even the best shooting guard in the NBA, which is ludicrous. James Harden is up there with some of the most criticized athletes in the NBA. Hell, he might even be the most criticized. So let's talk about why some of those criticisms are really dumb. First and foremost, let's talk about James Harden's defense. Now, the other day, I posted a 2K talk where I talked about the NBA season coming back and the potential asterisks that might be on the 2020 NBA championship. I mentioned James Harden in that video and how he had lost some weight, and I said that I wasn't sure if that weight loss would be good for him as a player, because his strength was a big factor for him in both his offense and defense. His ability to barrel his way to the basket is why he's able to draw so many fouls and score so many points, and his strength contributes to his biggest defensive asset, which is his post defense. When I was saying this, I called him one of the best post defenders in the NBA in the process. And when I said that, I got about 8 to 10 comments saying that I was crazy for saying that James Harden was good at post defense or good at anything defensively, period. I even got the classic "I'm unsubscribing because I disagree with something you said" comment. By the way, people that comment that they're unsubscribing, I guarantee you no creator that you're telling that to gives a fuck. But the point is, those 8 to 10 people didn't know that James Harden is one of the best post defenders in the NBA. That's just a fact. Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is that people are overly critical of James Harden's defense because as a whole, he's actually pretty solid on the defensive end. I'd go as far as to say when he really wants to be, he is a good defender. Of course, these comments would be valid a few years ago because back in like 2015, James Harden became a meme from how terrible of a defender he was, not from lack of ability but lack of effort. The guy really couldn't have given less of a shit on that end. He was on Shaqtin' a Fool pretty much every week with a play of him just letting his man get by him and score, but because of the backlash that he got, he improved his game drastically on that end. Now sometimes the effort is still questionable, but I really cannot blame him being the offensive load that he has to bear. But with that being said, his post defense is some of the best in the NBA, not just from a guard, but from any player, period. I don't know if y'all remember this, but the All-Star game that happened only 3 months ago, Jesus Christ, it feels like a fucking year. In that game, Team Giannis down the stretch in that fourth quarter was trying to go at James Harden. They specifically targeted him on that end. Giannis even said as much. At one point, James Harden found himself matched up on Pascal Siakam a few times in a row, and Team Giannis kept giving it to him, trying to get him to score on Harden, and he didn't because Harden played great post defense. I think this era of versatility on defense has made people start to underappreciate the value of strength, especially on the defensive end of the floor. Ben Simmons even said this when he was streaming the other day.
Yo, here's the one thing. I got something to say. Everybody like talks on James' defense and stuff, but he can play D. I don't understand how strong that dude is, bro. I swear. He's a strong guy. A lot of people listen to like analytics and stuff, like makes no sense. Like who listens, like analytically, you can't always look at numbers.
And ironically, with what Ben said about analytics in this little clip, James Harden's also great at defense analytically. James is 22nd in defensive win shares this season, 15th last season, and 15th in 2018. He also has the most blocks of any guard over the last 2 years. Now, I don't think that makes him a great defender, but he is most certainly not a bad one. Does he deserve to be in the all-defensive conversation? Of course not. However, he isn't the kind of defender that he was like 5 years ago. But now let's move on to another dumb criticism, which is honestly the dumbest of the bunch. At least with the defensive one, he was a bad defender earlier in his career, and I could see how people would be confused by that. However, this criticism has no real validity, and that is the argument that James Harden relies too much on fouls to score. Now, don't get me wrong, when I'm thinking of players who are going to draw fouls, James Harden immediately comes at the top of my mind. However, one, the notion that James Harden needs fouls to score is just straight up false, and two, it is not consistent with other players in the league. That's really my biggest issue with this criticism. This year, Jimmy Butler shot 9 free throws a game in 34 minutes a game. He is making 7.6 of those a game, which means that Jimmy is only scoring 12.6 points per game excluding free throws. His free throw attempt rate of 68% is the highest of his career, and not only that, it's a 9% higher rate than James Harden's career high free throw attempt rate, and it's a whole 16% higher than Harden's current free throw attempt rate from this season. And yet, not once have I seen anybody give Jimmy Butler shit for playing this way. Not once have I seen anybody say that he is cheating the system, that he relies too much on fouls. Even when he was in Chicago, I'm a Bulls fan. He still did this and no one gave him flack. Jimmy got nothing but praise. James Harden over the last 3 years has averaged 24.1 points per game minus his free throws. And that is the highest amount of a player minus their free throws of anyone in the last 3 years. So no, he doesn't need free throws to score, and also he's not the only player who plays like this. And even if he was, so what? I don't think people appreciate how valuable of a skill drawing fouls is. It really can be the difference between a good offensive player and an all-time great one. Really, the two differences between James Harden and D'Angelo Russell are Harden's ability to get to the line and get to the rim. Give D'Angelo Russell those abilities and he basically is James Harden. But just with those two skills being lacking for D'Angelo Russell, Harden has a massive advantage in talent. And for all of the old NBA fans out there, in the seasons that both Jordan and Kobe averaged 37 and 35 points per game, Jordan shot 11.9 free throws and Kobe shot 10.2. In Jordan's case, that's a higher amount of free throws attempted per game than James Harden has ever had in a slower pace. Now, if you think that Harden is flopping for his free throws or hooking his arm, which he does sometimes, that's valid, but at the end of the day, what he's doing is working. So don't hate the player, hate the game. Now, one criticism that I definitely do find legitimate is how his play style translates to the playoffs. Now, I said in the intro that I have been critical of Harden in the past, and it's because of this specifically. That and what his game is aesthetically, which is not a real criticism, it's just something I'm annoyed by. Aesthetics don't really matter. At the end of the day, if it's effective, it's effective. I don't find Tim Duncan to be all that exciting to watch, but he's still a top 10 player of all time. But with the criticism of James Harden's play translating to the playoffs, I feel that people sometimes take it a step too far. It would be accurate to say that James Harden does not show up in the moments that you would like him to in the playoffs. I remember in last year's playoffs when Kevin Durant went out at the end of Game 5, I was sitting there waiting for James Harden to get the Rockets the free win, and he just didn't. Harden had 31 points in that game on over 60% shooting. However, he only shot the ball a grand total of 3 times in that fourth quarter. He literally had the same amount of shot attempts that quarter as Iman Shumpert. But I do feel that it is wrong to say that James Harden is some all-time horrible playoff performer. James can often disappear in moments when the Rockets really need him to show up, but in general, he's pretty good in the playoffs relative to his expectations from the regular season, because obviously for a normal player, he's phenomenal. In his career in Houston, he has averaged 29.6 rebounds and 7.7 assists with a 61% true shooting percentage. In the playoffs over the last 8 years, he has averaged 28.2 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists with a 57% true shooting percentage. Now, of course, that is a statistical drop-off, however, it's not as significant as the narratives around James Harden would have you believe. Does he disappear in the playoffs in big moments pretty frequently, more frequently than you would like? Yeah. Is he in general just a bad playoff player? No. That's not to say those moments don't matter. I think it's those moments that separate you from being a champion and not being a champion, but he's not horrible in the playoffs. And also, one more dumb criticism of James Harden. I mentioned a second ago what his true shooting percentage was, and I have to say that the narrative that James Harden is not efficient is not just my opinion that it's stupid, it's straight up false. Can we please agree to stop using field goal percentage in 2020? Especially for players who shoot a shit ton of threes, specifically contested threes. Because true shooting percentage and or effective field goal percentage are the best ways to judge the efficiency of a player in 2020. And James Harden is not only good in that category. In his peak in Houston, he has a 61% true shooting percentage, which is elite. So those are the dumb criticisms of James Harden. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.